and welcome to another episode of What the Tech. I'm your host, Rolando Rosas, and today we're exploring remote work and how to be successful with remote work. And we've got a special guest today, Barbie Brewer, former executive at Netflix and chief people officer at ClickUp. But before we get to Barbie and all the action, I got to welcome back the other half of the show, who had a nice, wonderful a nice sit-in guest while we were gone. Where's that chair?
Oh my God, I was so flattered, Rolando, to see the empty chair last week. I was wondering how you were going to pull it off by
There it.
yourself, and
Oh my goodness, there it is. Is
yeah,
that in
it
another
turns
room?
out just an empty space was good enough for me. Listen, sometimes there's an empty space between these ears, so the chair and me, we got a lot in common sometimes.
Oh my goodness, Dave. Well-deserved vacation. It looks like you got some sunshine. Your
A
face
little
looks a
bit.
little. You got a smile going, so you must have relaxed quite a bit, and let the sun hit your face, and maybe the water hit your toes, and all
all
kinds of
those
other stuff.
all those things, not to sound cliche, but I did need a vacation after the vacation.
We're going through some tough times. We were just talking before we went live that right now, as of this taping, so this is being taped August 10th, 2021. That on LinkedIn there was an article that they were reposting from both Bloomberg and Wall Street Journal, where they're saying, I'm just going to read, rip up the playbooks for the next few months, given what's happening. And it looks like a lot of managers that were planning on going back to the office are starting to roll those back. I know LinkedIn announced last week that they were planning to send people back in September back to the office. They're now pushed that off into next year. And I believe Amazon also announced that they're moving that date further back into 2022. So that's a good 5-6 months away. Conditions have changed, and so they're adjusting. So if you're thinking of going back to the office, I guess you've come to the right place. We're going to discuss that today and see what Barbie. She's clued in on a bunch of stuff that's going on in the corporate world, and love to get her thoughts and opinions on that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's jump into the trivia question, Dave.
All right. So what does our producer have for us today?
Oh my!
Monday is the
My.
most common sick day in the world, except in this country. Oh
Mm,
boy. I
okay.
don't I don't see the United States on there, but I do see Australia, Britain, Canada, India, or Japan. Wow.
Mm,
I have a feeling I know
mm.
what I'm thinking in my head, but we'll get to that at the end of the show. We'll see what Barbie thinks about this trivia
Oh,
question
you
as
know what? It's a
well.
good one for her. Maybe she can weigh in on that. She knows what's going on there. All right, let me tell you a little bit more about Barbie, because she is somebody that has some ideas and thoughts that I wanted to have on this podcast for quite some time. Um, she has a lot to say. Well, let me tell you about her. Do we have her? There we go. Um, she is an HR executive with 20 plus years of experience in human resources and has leadership across multiple business cycles, industries, as well as countries. Love to probe her brain about what countries she's been to. She's focused on strategic results, deep professionalism, I can't even read, expertise in all HR disciplines. She's also an expertise at working at C level with private and public companies. Uh, and she has worked at several companies that we're going to jump into, and would love to bring her out of the virtual green room. Let's welcome Barbie Brewer.
Hi, all.
Hi,
How you
Barbie.
doing, Barbie?
Good to be here.
All right, wonderful. Where are you joining us from today?
I am joining you from the East Bay in California, from Pleasanton.
All right, West Coast.
Yeah.
Big up to my West Coast people. West Coast in the house. So, Barbie, before we get into all the action, I want to remind our folks to, as they're watching this podcast, we're bringing this to you live on multiple platforms, and we're going to keep bringing you more content. We're also streaming live on TikTok. But the other thing that you could do if you want to show us your support and love is to go ahead and click and subscribe, get notified, because we also release additional bonus footage through the week. And the only way to find out if we've released it is to get notified. So go ahead, hit all the buttons, hit all the whistles, so you can be in on the club like everybody else.
I
All
love
right.
your sound effect on that, Rolando. I think you changed it up a little bit. It
I
used to
did.
go.
I did. That's the usual one, but I changed it up. Okay, so before we get to Barbie and her opinions on a few other things, I want to roll some footage. We ready for that footage, Ori? Okay, so Ori's going to queue up some footage. We're going to see that I want you to react to and get your thoughts on. I'm not going to say much about it. Was that Ori? You ready? Okay, so let's go ahead and roll that footage.
Show a majority of people say that they have been more productive working from home. Why do companies feel the need to bring their employees back?
Some experts say that the physical office arrangement is outdated, given that the technology exists to allow us to work remotely. And if the experiment that's taken place over the past year has shown that it's effective. However, not everyone's on board. The CEOs of some of the biggest banks, including JP Morgan, Chase, and Goldman Sachs, want workers back immediately. And what they say is that remote work doesn't work well for young workers who require one-on-one mentorship. That just doesn't work as well over Zoom. And younger workers in particular, some of them really look forward to the social dynamic that's built into working out of an office. One boss said that his mostly young workforce is chomping at the bit to get back to work. And that could also be because they are young in their careers. And if they live in a city like London or New York, they could be working out of a shoebox. So you're going to have a really different experience if you're working out of a shoebox versus a villa.
All right, Barbie, what did you think about what you just heard?
I don't think it's wrong. I think that, having been across the world, I do see that in different countries as well that just have a different typical building size and things. So I remember at one company I worked with, the CTO worked out of his closet. So I get that people have different needs and different jobs and positions have different needs and requirements as well. I love the idea of investing in co-working spaces. I think there's been some controversy around how some companies went into that in the beginning, but I think it's ripe now for more of that, and that enables people to get that social connection if they want to at work. For me, and maybe this is because I'm old, I don't
You're
know.
not old. You
But
have experience. You're not old.
okay, and also it probably has to do with a little bit of the fact that I'm in HR, so I get to investigate all these wonderful social interactions that go bad.
Hmm.
But I don't know that that's the healthy place to build your social network or your friendships. At work, we need to be, focused on work. We want people we like to work with. We want to have fun with the people we work with, but we don't want to have to make new friends every time we go to a new job. As I think Steve Cadigan mentioned in a previous podcast you did, um, people are moving companies commonly, right? It's
Right.
3 to 4 years is considered a long time.
Yeah, no, the 20-year plan is over with.
It
People are
is, yeah.
that's probably the idea of some folks that have been around at a particular company for a long time, but it
Mhm.
doesn't seem like that's what's happening anymore.
No, it's not. And so I like to keep my friends around more than 3 to 4 years, ideally. So I like that I have friends in my community and we can meet for lunch, we can go out for drinks, but I don't have to worry if I'm complaining about my boss that day. I can do that to my friends. I can't do that to work friends. That wouldn't be appropriate.
Right. I was surprised in that in that little clip that she was saying that the younger, newer employees were the ones that were chomping at the bit to come out and get back to the office for that social piece, because I picture folks that are in that early 20s, to 30 kind of age bracket. They're used to using social media to form relationships and to have, these sort of interactions, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok or other places like that. I would think that the younger folks would be more adept to being able to have those relationships than folks that are maybe a little 20 years into their career there.
Yeah.
I would think that the older folks that we would need a little more help to get that social connection.
Yeah, I'm not sure. My son's always, of course, on video games and Discord, but he's 14. And I also think the problem is, remember, I went remote in 2017, right? So it was far before COVID.
Yep.
remote work, and that doesn't mean working from home. That really means working from anywhere, fundamentally, or can. You it During COVID, we've had our social networks ripped apart from us. Our kids haven't been able to go to school and see their friends. I've been working and I've been homeschooling my children essentially. It's very challenging. I haven't been able to meet my girlfriends out for a drink or things. So it becomes, work and your Zoom calls become your only social outlet.
Right.
That's not how it's supposed to be, right?
No.
So think about a world in which you're not just on Zoom or sitting in your living room or at the grocery store, right? You actually can go out and have fun and do things. And then really think about, do you really want all that to be with work folks, or might it be great if you could build relationships within your community, and travel and have freedom? So I think young people do want social connection. They do want to go out and play pool or go bowling or have a beer, and that's wonderful. And what flexible working arrangements provide is for you to have that ability and not be reliant on just your company for that. And I think it's a different frame of mind. And we've all been thrown into this COVID environment, which is negative in so many ways.
Mm.
Luckily, technology exists, so we could at least keep working and be productive. But we've been surviving. We haven't been thriving. And so we really need to get into a different frame of mind of, wait, I can get a lot of my needs met by people that I don't work with. And that's healthy.
Yeah.
That is,
Absolutely.
I think I agree with you, and I think let's go back to our buddy Steve. He had talked about how in other countries, social networks look a little differently because work isn't the center of attention of all of our lives, of all of our waking moments. Where in the U.S., it tends to be work is everything for a lot of people, and because of the lack of access to the office and people being in the office, like you said, being in this situation with COVID is very different than if we all could work from the office and there was no COVID, or we could work from home without COVID. Like we don't have right now, we're on top of being a lot of people forced to remote work. Some we just have to do it because of the need or the situation, rather than it be a more like, hey, you know what? Like you said, the policy for right now, everybody could work from home as they need and it'd be flexible. And there's none of this extra health situation that we're all having to carry and worry about.
Yeah.
This is more of a pressure cooker situation on top of the fact that a lot of people are adjusting a new way of work.
Yep.
So I agree with you there, 100%. I want to ask you about something else. And there is a statement that I want to read to you. Do we have Catherine's statement there to show, Ori? We throw that up? Okay. I want to read something to you. This is Catherine Merrill. She's an executive CEO of Washington Media, and here's what she had to say. The executive, as a CEO, I want my employees to understand the risks of not returning to the work in the office. And this was an op-ed that she had written. If the employee is rarely around, management has a strong incentive to change their status to contractor. That's that's really a big change if you're going to go from employees to contractor for many reasons. And I know you can amplify some of that and clarify that. And then she went on to say this, although there might be some pains and anxiety going back to the office, the biggest benefit for workers may be simple job security. Remember, something every manager knows. The hardest people to let go are the ones you know. Now, there was a lot more that she had to say on this piece. There was a lot of blowback, and she corrected some of this, or I should say she refined some of her, but she basically come out and said that if you don't come to the office, we're changing your status to a contractor versus an employee, which for a lot of people would be a very big ordeal to go through.
Well, and it will be for her company as well because it's largely illegal. So
There
just from
you
an
go.
employment law perspective, she's got something to learn there. But it's a fine perspective to have. It sounds very much like a veiled threat to me, and not very veiled. And I hate the idea of the people you know or the people you don't let go. What does that mean? If I become a good buddy with my boss and get on his good side, then I can be a bad employee, but he's going to keep me around and you're going to have to deal with me because he likes me.
Mm.
I do not like that at all. And to me, if you can't trust your workers in the office, then that's the issue. If you can't trust them in the remote work environment, that's the issue. But why would you bring someone into an office and feel more comfortable with someone you don't trust that way? I leave my purse by my desk. I can sometimes have to walk out to the parking garage when it's late at night. I sure hope you trust those people I'm working with.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And one of the things that kind of rubs me the wrong way with that statement is if that's an organization that also has a field sales presence across the territories, those people they come to that headquarters twice a quarter, and then once for the big sales kickoff. So those people aren't seen every day. They're out in the field, they're selling, they have their quotas, they have their reports. People know that they're up to task and meeting their
Yeah.
expectations. But to just say if they're not here, are they working for me? Do I know them, or that they're disposable? Nah, I don't
Yeah,
I
no.
don't agree with that statement.
And some of my strongest relationships I've had in the workplace are when I was working for a remote company. So I also reject the notion that you can't get to know somebody unless you can touch them physically. One,
Mm.
you shouldn't be doing that at work. And two, you you have a real ability to connect online as well. And like you said, the young people have already learned this. But if I think about my 6 years at Netflix, if I think about my 7 years at Cisco, and I think about my 1.5 years at GitLab, it's the GitLab people I still keep in touch with. It's the GitLab folks that are coming and joining me at ClickUp. Nothing changed in our relationship when one of us left a company. We could still hop on a Zoom or hop on a phone and talk to each other. And we got to know each other great. In fact, better. I got to meet their kids. I got to see their dogs start barking when FedEx arrives and then see their dogs. I
Yeah.
got to see their cats or their favorite house plant. I
Yes.
got to see different views of where they're sitting. They actually welcomed me into their home. How better way do you get to know someone?
Right.
You're welcomed into their home.
Yeah, good
Um,
point.
and when we would get together once every 9 months at GitLab, really the only thing new we learned is height.
How
It's
You
tall
know,
hype.
the,
somebody is.
the, the only comment ever said was, "Wow, you're a lot taller than I thought you'd be." Or, that was the main only new aha by spending time together. I do think it's important to spend time together. I do think you need to take those opportunities, but they shouldn't be opportunities to get work done. They should be opportunities to bond. And so it's a different narrative. It's a different perspective of looking at it. I hope people will evolve and CEOs will evolve in this area. I think we have quite frankly, a moral obligation to evolve in this area, especially for in the SaaS business and the SaaS world.
Right, and I think what you're saying is that tech companies should be leading the envelope here, because the nature of the industry is there's always change. Things are moving, and they're either accelerating in some form because there's new players, incumbents are starting to lose ground, and that's the nature of a lot of tech businesses. But before we go further talking about tech and I want to dial it into a different industry where we have another quote from another CEO, very very large organization as well. Do we have that, Ori? Here we go. Here's his friendly face. CEO David Solomon of Morgan Stanley had to say this. This is one where I really wanted to see what you think about this, because this topic is coming up quite a bit about pay and paying employees that work in different locations than where they were hired. If you want, and this is what he said, this is a direct quote. If you want to get paid New York rates, that's big bucks. Oh, wait, is this James Gorman? I missed. Okay, I think I said okay. I said Dave. Okay, James Gorman. None of this. I'm in Colorado and work in New York, and I'm getting paid like I'm sitting in New York City. Gorman barked. I guess that's what the article said. He barked. Must have been very emphatic about this. Sorry. Let me say it like you would. Sorry, that doesn't work. Now let me end on this one. If you can go into a restaurant in New York City, you can come into the office. And when I read that, I was just floored, because this is a guy who thinks because you hang out at a restaurant in New York, you equate every moment of your non working life and the judgments and decisions you make as if you were working. And that to me, I'll tell you, it offended me to even hear that, because I think Mr. Gorman, let me say it this way. I think a lot of employees of his would love to have a limousine pick them up and take them to work, and not have to deal with traffic,
Who
and not
wouldn't?
have to deal with telecommuting or
Helicopter would be
commute.
better, but yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, and
Mm.
probably he takes a helicopter more than likely, right? And so if you can take a limousine to work, why not give that to your employees? It's a really dumb argument to make, but I think that folks like him, in my opinion, are gonna see things changing. I know attitudes are changing at work, and the latest surveys that say that about 39% of workers would rather quit. Other survey that say they won't take an additional 30,000 in pay. I know some of those people must work at there because those surveys were also including Morgan Stanley and some of the other banks that I saw recently. And so I don't know how he can avoid the impact of probably key people walking out the door and going to other places where they'll pay them exactly what they want and treat them better.
Yeah, I think that the talent war right now is the most competitive it's ever been. So employees do have a lot of options. That's a here and now concern, and depending on how companies react to this moment in time, it will grow or not. The pay issue, aside from if you can go to a restaurant, you can work in an office. The pay
Yeah,
issue
what
is
do you think about that?
complex. Yeah, the pay issue is complex, and it's not as simple as um, it's not simple. So, for example, if I'm doing a job and I'm doing that job in San Francisco, uh, and you pay me $100,000 a year, I can't afford to buy a home. I can barely afford my rent. If you hire me in Iowa and pay me $100,000 a year, I can probably buy a home and maybe even support my family. So
Hmm.
paying the same isn't really paying the same, if that makes sense. So there are markets now. If we can embrace this idea of work from anywhere, you're going to see that begin leveling out, and we're already seeing that today. So we're
Okay.
seeing now that the markets aren't as specific to zip codes as they used to be. But and we're seeing some housing pricing things going on too, right? So sometimes the suburbs are having housing prices increase and rents increase more than the cities are.
So let me ask
So
you about that. Let me jump because I want to ask you
mhm,
about that. Just drill down a little bit more. So if you guys, if you, let's just say it doesn't matter, Netflix, ClickUp, any of the firms that you were an HR person, when somebody is applying, let's use your example from Iowa City, and they want to be an engineer, just a,
mhm.
they're an engineer in Iowa, and versus some another engineer, equal experience, around the same age, same background, and they are out of San Jose. What you're saying is those wages today are paid differently because of where they live. And if somebody moves from San Jose to Dubuque, Iowa, the pay may change. Is that what you're saying?
I think it depends on the company and the talent they're looking for. And again, this evolution is going to change all of current day anyway. Right now, if you do want to get, a director of software engineering with 20 years of experience at the best companies, you're not going to find them outside of some of these big cities.
Uh
And
huh.
so they're already going to have kind of that salary expectation.
Okay.
But I think that as time, I mean, what I'm passionate about remote work, and one of the things that means the most to me is that there's brilliant talent across this country and across this world, but there's not brilliant opportunity. So if we can bring the opportunity to the people instead of bringing the people out of their communities, this won't be a question for very long. With that
Mm.
being said,
Okay.
though, if you give people the choice of where to live, I don't think the quality of life should change based on where you live or work if you work for the same company. It's the same thing when I was at Cisco and I got sent on expat assignment in Germany, right? There
Nice.
was a cost of living adjustment for me when I made that move because of tax differentials, because all kinds of different things.
Hmm.
And that was a cost of living differential to make me whole. It needed to adjust. Similar to if you ask me to commute to San Francisco every day for work, even though I'm only 40 minutes away, I'm going to ask for 50% more pay than if I can work from home
Okay.
because I don't want to do that. So you're going to get different motivations, and you're going to get it's worth it to some people, it's not to others. Now, would I say you should do a blanket decrease across the board? No. What we set up at GitLab was a bit unique. What we did is we did have local markets that we looked at. Again, we had people in 64 countries. So we're talking about a wide variety in what the salary market was in these different areas. but we wouldn't pay anybody less than half of what we're paying in San Francisco. So this meant that a lot of employees were paid over market value for where they lived.
So
Way
you
over.
set a floor for the wages.
Yeah, we set a floor, so
Okay.
we didn't perpetuate the inequality of income, but and we were helping to improve it across the world. But that takes time. I remember back in the late '90s when everyone really started opening up offices in India. It was really disruptive to the India economy for a while there to be hiring some of these tech talent at such a different market rate than what's in India at the
Mm.
time. So I'm okay with it, with letting some of this organically evolve, but I do think there's a responsible way of doing it, and the responsible way isn't to take advantage of poor economic areas. That's not
Mhm.
the responsible way. But it doesn't mean there shouldn't be some trade-offs. It's the same thing where I get all the time, like, why do they get to have the commuter allowance? I don't get a commuter allowance when someone's remote. It's like, you don't commute, you work at home.
Right.
So there's certain, like, part of us has, we need to grow up a little bit too and understand, you know, our budgets and finances and what it means. And it's certainly, if we're going to be in a remote world, we have to have people act like adults if they're going to work in an adult company. But it's a very controversial. We also didn't pay anyone less if they were within a 90-mile commute of a city. So that might mean that if you lived in Modesto, California, which is far more than 90 minutes if you're going to San Francisco during the commute hour, you would still get San Francisco rates. So we weren't taking advantage of the lower Modesto economy.
Mm.
So there was a lot we did to try to augment it, but you have to be realistic too.
And as individual employees, you know what? We need to be advocates for ourselves.
Hmm.
You know, we try to, we negotiate our salaries, we negotiate our raises.
Hmm.
How what is your worth? Go get what you're worth,
Hmm.
regardless of where you're located,
Yeah.
regardless of the
Hmm.
budget that the organization has for their employees. Go get what you're worth, be an advocate for yourself,
Hmm.
and live where you need to live. But you had said that there's, Steve Cadigan talks about the great career migration,
Hmm.
having these new opportunities because of the technology. We have the bandwidth, we have the hardware, and it's just finding the right organization where you can find your place, you can be successful, you can be a contributor, but always advocating for yourself for what you're
Yeah.
worth to get
And
paid, what you want to get paid.
and supply and demand is a realistic economic effect in this world, right? And
Yeah,
so as the supply of talent becomes broader, and demand continues, we're going to really see this organically start to evolve.
for
But
sure.
the ball's in the candidates' court right now.
Yep. Well,
Mm.
hey, it's an interesting time. It's funny how the tables have turned a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
This kind of goes to, measuring success or keys to being successful within a hybrid, work environment or a hybrid work policy. How do organizations and individuals measure success when when they're remote?
Um, why would it be any different?
I agree.
Different than working at. So you're not sitting physically. Well, let me rephrase what Dave said.
Okay.
For managers that are not used to a remote work environment, their
Hmm.
experience on this is new to them, right? They're used to seeing Susie and Johnny sit in their butts and seats in their cubicles, respective cubicles, right? Now they've had measuring tools in the past, but now that they're Johnny and Susan are physically not there, how would you go about advising a company on ensuring success for this new hybrid work environment?
I think that there's different management skills that need to be learned. Actually, I won't say different skills that need to be learned. More skills that need to be reinforced, right? So,
Hmm.
first of all, the manager who was measuring productivity by someone sitting at their desk, maybe they were watching your show and they weren't doing their work. They don't know.
Keep
Um,
watching our show.
yeah. So, I mean, it was a false sense of security to begin with, but
hundred
doing
percent.
check-ins, tools like, some of the equipment and things that you provide. ClickUp is great because you can see what people are working on. You're not spying, but people can share their work with you and you can contribute and things. And that's great, but you actually have to manage instead of just hoping all goes well. And And you should. I am biased towards managing towards results, not time sitting at my desk or at my computer.
I think that's the
So
key. Well, you know what? Hey, Ori, let's do a pro tip with what Barbie just said. Rewind 5 seconds back, Barbie. I want to do a pro tip. Go ahead, Ori. Go ahead, Barbie. Say that again.
okay, I think managers should define success by the results that they're achieving, not by the time they see someone sitting at a desk or in front of a computer.
I agree. A hundred
Yep.
thousand percent on that. Because if you can achieve, if you can produce, let me put it this way: if you could produce, get the work done, whether you're sitting at your desk like you're there in your home, or in the office, why should it matter, right?
And the risk is actually greater the other direction. Managers need to get better actually at recognizing burnout because
Mm,
people are actually largely putting in more hours as they're working at home, especially from during the COVID and shutdowns, right? Like nothing else to do, I might as
yep.
well work.
Yep,
Um,
every survey
so,
says that. Yeah,
yeah.
people are working longer,
Mhm.
and even way before the pandemic, there's a bunch of studies by Ernst and Young. All the consulting firms did a bunch of teleworking, telecommuting studies for the government years ago, and they all are saying the same thing now that they said 10, 15 years ago.
Mhm.
That people work longer, people work smarter, they're healthier. They have a little bit better mental stability because of all of those things they don't have to do. And I heard you say something that is an amazing statistic. Speaking of working from home and its impact on people, I heard you say that uh, you were talking to a law enforcement official, and you had mentioned in this conversation, this talk, in one of the conferences you were at, that this particular police officer had mentioned to you that driving from Modesto, California, into the Bay Area is about 90 minutes a day, and over half of the domestic abuse cases were as a result of husbands who had to do that commute on a daily basis. And
Yeah, it was,
that's
yeah,
amazing. Like I was like blew my mind that that
yeah.
kind of commute would have that impact on people.
Yeah, people don't realize the impact of these large commutes. They also don't realize the impact of the communities losing their top talent to other communities instead of being able to keep it within their community. Yeah, this officer I think he used to work somewhere on the peninsula, and then he moved to Modesto, and we were somewhere on the peninsula, and I said, why is spousal abuse so much more common in Modesto? It wasn't a stat, it was an anecdotal opinion, of course, but he said, or I actually asked him if it is because I had an idea that it could be because of the commute. And he said, absolutely. The
Hmm.
people who have to commute every day they get home, they're at wit's end, and we see a lot more spousal abuse from men who do long commutes than that don't. And that was huge for me. But too, I'm just as excited about, we have brilliant talent. Let's just keep it in America for now to keep things simple. But we have brilliant talent in just about every city in America. Every city in America does not have brilliant role models to look at about what they can come and achieve in life. What
Hmm.
if Take Your Parents to Work Day had a plethora of different professions and opportunities to open people's eyes up to and say, wow, I could be this. And different examples than just what they see on the news and what they see on the TV, but healthy examples. I think that could be huge. I think it's also huge if they stay in their communities, they make a lot of money, and their community keeps the tax revenue instead of all going to California or Texas or Washington or New York. I think it's awesome if their communities can teach their tax revenue, can have them frequently in their restaurants and their stores and their shops, can have them being role models in the community. This is how we'll change the world to become a better place, not passing different laws. It's
Hmm.
going to be what people do to support each other and the opportunity we provide each other, not the opportunity the government gives us. It's
Right.
that's not what we really need.
So local economies are they have positive impacts as a result of this because instead of going to the office every day and having that lunch or getting my hair cut while I'm over by the office during break,
Mhm.
I go down the street and buy from Susie's hardware shop or bake shop, get my lunch there, or take my breaks and go down the street to do whatever I need to do. My dry cleaning right here down the street rather than in the city.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
I mean,
That's it.
it's little things, but it's these little things that are going to make the difference. And it's great for diversity too, right? If you
Mhm.
just look at the different demographics across the country, not to, let alone the world, you'll see that there are centers of certain demographic identities. Why make them move? Why not? Why not build strong communities that already exist? Why do you have to change the community to make it strong? The people who live right there should be able to do that.
Well, I think what you're saying is, I'm just going to paraphrase, is that work is changing. The 9 to 5 come in, clock out, and obviously for folks that are in a factory job or flipping burgers, I had to do that in high school and in college, and that may not change as much. But for everybody else that's connected and working on a computer, you could do that job virtually anywhere, right? So work doesn't mean sitting in an office 9 to 5. It doesn't mean that you gotta, be in that cubicle every single day. And it probably time with time for some change in that we think of
Yeah.
work differently.
But I
Um,
will tell you though, I do think that the teacher, the firefighter, the law enforcement agent, they all benefit hugely from the tech industry getting off the roads.
ah,
If you don't think the nurse is going to be really happy that her normal 2.5 hour commute became 1 hour because there were fewer cars on the road, it
whoa,
it helps the
interesting.
environment. It helps. I mean, it really does extend. It doesn't, and then maybe you'll get more hospitals and more medical facilities in your community
Hmm.
because you'll have more people living and breathing in that community.
Right, right.
It really has it can have a global, to me, positive effect.
I think we need to explore some of these concepts a little bit more. We talk a lot about benefits for the employee, benefits for the employer. But Barbie, you've kind of enlightened me and opened up my eyes to some of the benefits from that local community aspect. And the comment about the stress level of folks that have spent, from Modesto coming home after 90 minutes and kind of what that brings home, some of that negative energy. Those are some things that I hadn't necessarily thought about. I think maybe I was just being a little too selfish and just thinking me and my family here, and I can be just as productive for my boss when I'm here, and I'm happy and my boss is happy. But I kind of like some of the direction that you've taken this conversation with, that community, excuse me, the community aspect of it all.
Yeah, and that's one of my little things I like to say is that let's focus the world around community and not companies. And
Yeah.
this is a time we can do that. And honestly, I do fundamentally believe as well, and I don't want to get political, but redistributing wealth has shown through history not to work. Redistributing opportunity is something we haven't tried yet.
Can I ask you, now that you talk about redistributing? I want to ask you about something you said that was so fascinating. I'd never heard of it. I've talked to a few other people. I've only had, and since I heard you say this, I've only had one person that told me they heard anything like that, which was, again, taking from that conference that you were in. You'd mentioned that there's a one good way, or one way to try to address the homeless problem, and that would be very effective, and that would be taking a lot of these office buildings, that are tech buildings. A lot of them today are empty, and a lot of the times they sit empty because a lot of folks don't even, they're not in those buildings, and take that space and convert that into shelters for the homeless. And a lot of these spaces are in big cities, small towns, all over
Mhm.
the place, and they're sitting idle or half empty. In some cases, right now, fully empty, or or completely empty.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I've never heard that, and I think that's a whole nother way of trying to address an inequality issue. So
Yeah, I've been
please
saying
expand.
that. Yeah, I've been saying that for a long time. We have some, I'm out here in the Silicon Valley, right? We got a lot of big, rich tech people.
Hmm.
They make a lot of promises. They say they care about a lot of things. They donate a lot of money. We could have a pretty quick solution if all these big giant buildings they stuffed people into. They actually made drug treatment centers, mental health
Mm,
facilities,
mm,
homeless shelters. It would improve not only the life of those in need, but the life of everyone else not to have to feel kind of like they're not being taken care of, right? See them
hmm.
in tents on the corner and think not only you get annoyed, right? What's the safety of this? Can my kids walk to school? Have they
Right.
been screened by Megan's Law before they set up on my corner? But you also feel guilt for it, and I feel just like it's a no brainer to me. But it's going to cost money to support these people, but far less than what we're donating right now to research it instead of doing something about it.
I think, I mean, if the tech industry threw their muscle behind what they're doing, and there's a lot of real estate that's not being that could be repurposed,
Hmm.
and that it can create a win-win situation, like you're saying. Workers
Hmm.
can work from home; they can be just as productive. A lot of those office spaces could either be donated or leased to nonprofits to run some of this,
Hmm.
and instead of the tax base, which actually in the end pays for a lot of this stuff, treating people in emergency rooms, treating people that may have mental health issues or drug problems, treating people to house them somewhere. This would be one much lower cost way of trying to get at that problem today in society. I
Hmm.
certainly have hope that your idea flourishes, because I think it has a lot of potential. I don't know where the business. I haven't heard any business leaders that maybe have a say in these big office towers, what how they feel about it.
I haven't
But I
either.
think.
They probably won't like me very much. CEOs love to see their name of their company on big tall buildings,
Yes.
right? So
Uh
go
huh.
ahead, keep your company name up there. That's gonna be the new billboards or whatever.
Right. Right.
If you're providing your building for that, then go ahead and keep that wonderful
No
name.
need to take it down, right?
Yeah,
Housing provided by Salesforce, or housing
yeah,
provided by
Yeah.
Cisco,
yeah.
or Apple, or
Hmm.
and you guys have a lot of them in your backyard over there.
Yep.
I mean, they have remote offices out here in the DC area that are
Hmm.
smaller. They have towers, but the towers here are in 10 stories, ten
Yeah,
stories instead of 40 or whatever. Or big
yeah.
campus. You guys have big campuses out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many problems we have in America right now that aren't complicated. They're just
Mm.
people who say they want to do good, but aren't really willing to put their their assets behind that in a way that's constructive. And I'm guilty of that too, right? I have a guest room in my house. I could offer that to someone. I don't. But but we can do more.
Agreed. Agreed. I think so. I want to come back a little bit, because we were talking about keys to success. So for those managers that are watching us either live or even during the playback, and they're thinking, "Wow, these are some interesting things. What else can a manager that is looking at the situation right now think? When they're thinking about what could we do? Should we make all meetings virtual, so that if they do bring back people into the office, is that something that would have a positive impact on either the remote workers or also those workers that are working from the office?"
It's hard. A lot of people do want to get back to the office, and I don't blame them. I think we're going to see a rush back to the office, and then we're going to start seeing a decline again if people are given the choice. But I think initially you're going to have a lot more people thinking they choose to want to be back there. But it's hybrid's the best of both worlds. If people want to be in the office, they can. If they don't have to. But it's not that simple, right? Sometimes it's these functions can, these can't. This level of employee can, this level can't, and it creates an us versus them thing. Even if it is completely just of choice, it can still create an us versus them. So I consider there to be remote friendly when you tell people work where you want, and take what you get with it. It might not be as great of an experience, but you're getting paid and you're getting a job, so be happy. Or you can be remote first. And remote first would be a little bit more, one face per screen. Uh, so if people are in the office, it's more not built around meeting in the office per se. Not having everyone on the call listen to all the chitter chatter that happens 5 minutes before the meeting starts, because they're all talking around a conference room table and you feel like a complete outsider. There's just little things you have to do to make it work well, and there's a little bit of acceptance you have to do that it will always feel different
Okay.
for people who have, it'll feel different for the people who are remote than it does for people in the office, and that's okay, as long as you're not trying to pretend that difference doesn't exist.
Right. It's crazy that the past 18 plus months, we've all been forced to adopt new technology. Maybe cultures have changed over the last 18 months with, the forced, work from home. But Barbie, have you seen any individuals that were on one side of the fence pre-pandemic? They were forced to try something new, And has their mind shifted to, you know what, maybe this can be a great thing? Have you seen anybody just change their tune to,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. So you know that I was an advocate for remote work long before COVID existed. I
yep,
had my own health journey that I went on that required me to, be on chemo for a while. And a lot of people then were starting to be interested in it because of the talent war, but only because they wanted to get more talent and they wanted to get it cheaper, not really because they wanted to have people make it a thriving idea.
yeah,
And then I had a lot of people saying, no, that would never work for me. No, that would never work for me. And a lot of those people are now like, I don't want to go back. I have to go back. I just want to, I want to go back when I want to go back. But when I don't want to go back, I don't want to go back. And I don't want to have to say these 2 days a week because maybe I want to go to, New York that week and I want no days that week. But the next week I want 4. And they start to realize they're going to miss the flexibility. And I think there's some people who still don't see that because this shutdown hasn't been flexible.
right.
But when the flexibility starts to come back more, they go back to the office more, but they also can go off more. That will help. The kids going back to school, I think, is important. Um, and I think that's important for work too. It's impacted women a lot more than men with the kids doing school from home. And depending on where you are, this resonates for you. If you're not in California, it might not. But I do think that kids going back to school also keeps people more tethered to one location. But in the summers and things like that, I think they'll really enjoy their flexibility.
Let me ask you about because you're talking about different remote first or being an option. And GitLab's 100% remote, right?
Yes.
What's that like? Being fully remote for those folks that are either starting to be remote or are looking to go in that direction. What's that like? What's the workday for you like, or what's that experience like for as a manager?
Yeah, it's funny. It's I loved it, but I'll have to confess I'm a little bit of an introvert and I was, in my health situation at the time, but I got to know so many amazing people from so many different places as a manager. I hired some amazing recruiters in Nigeria. I had someone I absolutely loved in Russia. My very, very favorite HR ops person, her name was Brittany, and she's a military spouse. And her husband was very successful in the military in terms of going up into higher levels. I'm not familiar with the military terminology a whole lot. But she always had to quit her job every time her husband moved to a new base. And
Mm.
then with GitLab, she was able to keep her job and build a great career for herself instead of having to quit jobs every year. So for me, it was great. It was fun because we did get together, every 9 months. We'd go to Cape Town or we'd go to Croatia or we'd go to Crete or Prague. We'd go to all these different countries and just play essentially. Um, because we didn't want to wait for a meeting to get work done. Otherwise, no work is going to get done. But we still wanted to meet together, and it was just fun. We didn't have to worry about the work a whole lot. We went on excursions together. We had a lot of UGCs, which could be about career development or could be about yo-yo tricks, right? And partners and spouses were invited, and if they wanted to do a UGC on something they're an expert in, the other GitLabbers could come and join that and hear about it, right? So taking all that money spent on rent and facilities and janitorial staff and all that good stuff was spent for actually building connections and relationships. And in addition, I don't think they do this anymore, but when I was there, they also would give you, if you traveled to a different city or town or country, whatever have you, and you met with another person at GitLab, then they would reimburse your trip $200 per GitLabber that you met with while you were there.
Ooh.
So it could pay for your plane ticket or it could pay for your hotel room and it would pay more depending on how many GitLabbers you met with. So
Wow.
it encouraged people to get together and meet. But it in a much different way. The work could get done. Honestly, GitLab had people in over 60 countries. So we did a lot of things asynchronously, which is a different muscle to build.
I would
And there's a
imagine
lot of
so.
yeah, there's a lot of legal and tax complexities as you hire in 60 countries. There's a whole other
For
thing.
sure.
Yeah.
But
Imagine.
that's awesome. It sounds like you were able to build a fun, exciting culture,
Hmm.
great relationships
Hmm.
without seeing each other. Or I shouldn't say seeing each other because we all have video. We can use video, but it seems like you use the technology in the right way to form the relationships, and got excited about seeing each other every couple of months for the Croatia trip or
Yeah.
whatever it might be. That's fun. That's
Absolutely.
awesome.
I mean, like even now, talking to you guys right now, right? I don't feel like I know you any less than if we were sitting in the studio together.
Yeah.
If I went to Washington and I saw you in the street, I'd probably like, "Hey, Rago," and give you a big hug, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
of
it's
course.
just,
Yes.
yeah.
No, I heard somebody, maybe it was Gary V. He had something to say almost similar to what you said in that, you know, we're obviously more remote than we have ever been, but it's given us the opportunity to connect with people in a way that's deeper, more often, and less intrusive than, sometimes you meet people at gatherings, you don't know who they are, right? You're like, "Mm, hi, hello, hi," and you don't really know them. You don't know anything about them.
Right.
You don't know that they have two dogs and that,
Mhm.
or they live on a farm in Central Oregon, like you're talking about. So
Yeah.
they live out in those areas, and oh yeah, I said, oh, you're at your farmhouse or whatever, your
Yeah.
country house or your whatever, and now you get to know a little bit more about that, and it does do build a relationship from the work perspective in a way that probably we would have never have done, right?
Yeah, I never would. I mean, talk about, I mean, you do have to be deliberate when people join like a video conference and they're all waiting for everyone to join, so everyone's just quiet. Like,
Yeah.
you need someone at the company to like ask a trivia question or to play some music or get people talking. But you also have a lot of natural icebreakers. I kept my door closed today because, I'm doing a podcast with y'all.
Hmm.
But if I didn't, you might see a German Shepherd drop in and ask for a treat. You might see my Bernedoodle come in. I'm a huge dog person.
Yeah.
You might hear my son playing guitar in the background because one of the reasons I have a guitar back there is because my son loves playing guitar. It's just I honestly, it's fun and you do get to know people and if you just change the narrative in your head, like I can't become your friend because you're not sitting next to me,
Hmm.
wonderful things can happen.
Well, we do a little bit every now and then. We'll put in a pot of like, of money, 20, 30, 40. We even up it. We do a little trivia, like what you're saying.
Oh,
We do a little trivia. Hey, how many blah blah blah, and whoever can guess it will win that. And if it doesn't, it rolls over. And last year, I think
wow.
we did one where it rolled all the way around to Christmas time, and some people were very happy when they won because the pot kept rolling over and over
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
nobody could
trivia
guess
is a
it.
great way to get people talking. I mean, it's so much better than tell me what your weekend was. The weather was good.
Yeah. The
And when
weather.
you're in HR and you're doing these companies, you do trivia around things that are relevant to the company or the time of year. And then when you're in a global company, which a lot of these remote workforces are becoming, you can have around the holidays. You can have trivia questions around Kwanzaa. You can have trivia questions around Hanukkah. You can have trivia questions about different countries and when they celebrate and how they celebrate. And that really gets people talking. I used to do music clips, and you have to guess the song or the artist, and
Mm.
that got everybody talking about their favorite music or the best concert they've been to. And I had 10 trivia questions lined up, and we got through two, and that's great. That wasn't a failure. That was a win, right?
Right. No, absolutely. And I love how because that's a good segue into what I want to ask you next, which are
Mhm.
our four questions that we ask guests when they come on. There's no right or wrong answer. This is just so
Okay.
folks can get to know you. You're talking about music and trivia. And so we're going to go right into it. What is your favorite musician or musical group?
Ooh, favorite musician or musical group? I'm gonna lose so much street cred right now. I I love country music, so I'm
Oh,
gonna
you have
have
that
this.
guitar that's hanging in behind you on that
No, but
wall.
he plays electric and he loves AC/DC and he's doing different stuff.
Okay.
Although I do love Tom Petty and he does some good Tom Petty.
Huh,
Um, but
there you go.
yeah, I,
I
I
miss
would say
Tom
probably
Petty.
like Tim McGraw or something. I know it's not
Tim
cool.
McGraw. Oh, yeah, those are good tunes. They both are two great musicians. So cool. So people now know that's the kind of genre you like. What's your favorite app on your phone?
My favorite app on my phone, ClickUp.
Oh, there you go.
Plug, plug.
A plug. Oh yeah, a plug for ClickUp.
Sorry,
There
but
you.
it's true. I mean, it keeps my life in order. It's not just about work. I do my gardening with it. I do the kids' schedule with it. I remember when to, so yeah, I get my email through it. It
Okay.
really, yeah, so I like
Let
it.
me ask you, for those that don't know what ClickUp is,
Mhm.
what is ClickUp? What do they do?
Well, ClickUp is really a SaaS product to help you manage your life, really, or your work. And so think of it as like Asana meets Google Suite meets Trello me. I mean, it's just it kind of makes all that stuff where you can just have it in one app instead of trying to manage it in lots of different places. It
Hmm.
integrates with Slack, things like that. And so it's just a really good way for me to keep on top of what I need to get done whatever day. I can look at, okay, what am I doing today? What am I doing tomorrow? What do I need to have done 6 months from now? And that's why I say it's great for employers because your employees can share with that with you, and then you can get updates and stuff that way too. So yeah, so a total shameless plug, but it's
Absolutely.
I joined the company because I liked the product. I used it before I joined.
Wow, terrific. Well, that's what I wanted you to say is what it is, because some folks have heard of ClickUp and some haven't. For those that haven't, now you know what ClickUp is.
Yeah.
Favorite food? You've got so many good places out where you're at. I love going out on the West Coast just for this reason. What's your
I
favorite
am
food?
such a bad eater.
Oh,
I am unhealthy and I don't like to eat. So I'm gonna say pizza.
I love
On the
pizza.
West Coast?
I like Mexican food a lot too. I could live off of Italian and Mexican food.
Okay, okay. Pizza though, number one, then Mexican. Okay,
Mhm.
not bad. I like both. Those are two good food groups.
The
uh,
major food
I
groups.
used to have a
yes.
bowl of ice cream every day for breakfast when I was trying to really gain weight.
Oh man,
No.
you know what? We had to do. I did the same, but for playing in college football,
Mhm.
we were doing a lot of food, and ice cream was heavy in the rotation for that.
Yep.
Um, Last one. Preferred method of communication: email, text, phone call, instant message, or DM.
I don't find a big difference between text, instant, and DM, but um, definitely not phone. I hate phone calls. Um, so I'm gonna say the text, instant, or DM one, but they're not differentiated enough for me.
No. So on your phone, do you do more instant message on like I don't know, Google Hangouts, or what do you guys use internally? Just curious. What does ClickUp like? Do you use Teams
No,
for
we are in Google Suite, but we
Google
use
Suite?
ClickUp mostly. Just about everything goes through ClickUp because but we do use Slack.
Hmm.
We don't use Google Chat, I think it's called now. On
Yep.
my phone, I use Signal.
Okay.
Uh,
Hmm.
so that's what I use on my phone. But I also get sometimes things through Facebook Messenger and things like that. But yeah.
Okay. All right. Now we know a lot more about Barbie and ClickUp, which we did not know before. And if people want to follow you, Barbie, where should they go?
I guess LinkedIn. I don't have a big presence right now. As you guys know, I'm starting to work with Shane because he wants to,
Big
improve.
plug to Shane. I think
Yeah.
is he still stateside, or did he finally go to Portugal?
No, he's still stateside right now.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I think you'll be able to find me easier soon. But right now, I think going to my LinkedIn, you'll see some of my presentations I've done and some of my perspectives on things other than remote work. So feel free to check me out there.
All right. They should, because you got a lot of cool stuff, a lot of interesting perspectives on things, and that's why I wanted to have you here, and hopefully managers and other employees that have been watching this or will watch this during the playback. If you're watching this during the playback, go ahead and follow Barbie on LinkedIn. She's got a lot of cool posts and stuff on LinkedIn, and also want to remind you while we're talking about following, go ahead and follow us, like and subscribe, hit all the bells and whistles. There you go,
There it
Dave.
is. There it is.
And you will get inside nuggets that we release throughout the week. And so if you're on YouTube, go ahead and click that notify bell so that you know when we've released new nuggets behind the scenes and other things, so that you're in the know and now you're up to date. All
So
right.
Barbie, at the beginning of our shows, we like to do different things, different trivia questions. You had said that yourself that you're a fan of trivia, so I'm going to throw this one over to you.
I can't wait to see what you
Oh,
So-
I should have Googled it then.
say. You had time.
So, as we open up the show, Monday is the most common sick day in the world, except in this country. I have a feeling I know where you're going to go.
Okay.
I'm going to reserve my answer, but I'm curious to hear what you think here.
I'm gonna just guess here, but I'm gonna say E, Japan.
I'm gonna go Australia.
I also think E, Japan.
All right. Let's see who's wrong and right.
Oh,
Oh,
There
you
you go.
probably
And
cheated. You knew the
I
answer,
know
right?
you know what? Ori, who's our producer, he springs these now on us. Before, yes, about a month ago, you would say, "Yeah, maybe I cheated because I." But this case, I did not know. You know what I was thinking? I was the time zone change.
Oh,
So Australia is like I don't know how many hours ahead. So it may be technically Tuesday or something like that.
oh, yeah.
did you know?
That's you're more
Did you know
thoughtful.
that Monday is also the number one? That's the most popular day for a workers' comp claim.
Mm, I didn't know that. That's probably
Yeah,
from your former life, Dave.
yes,
Yeah.
that's what they said. Monday's the day. Get hurt on the weekend. Hold on to the pain and pretend something happened in the office on Monday.
Oh, come
I
on,
don't endorse
people.
that.
Yeah, act like adults.
Well, Barbie, you've been such a great sport. I
Yeah,
loved
thanks.
having you on there on with us. You've enlightened us, brought a lot of knowledge, and hopefully a lot of folks that are watching this either live or even the playback, uh, been able to take some of this back to their jobs or their employers so that they could take some action on it. And so now, Ori, are we throwing it to end screens? All right, let me see where I'm pointing. I always forget. And if you've watched this video, Dave and I are going to join you in the next set of videos. So make sure you go in there and we'll join you inside of those videos.